And we're live. Thank you again for tuning in to the 8th edition.
We're live.
Oh, we got some echo going in. I think it's Dave.
Oh, we got some echo.
Dave, you might need to.
Dave.
Maybe I can mute you.
Yeah. You might need to.
There we go. No.
I can mute.
Yeah, maybe it's best practice, guys, if you're not actively talking, to mute yourself.
Yeah, I think so. What a good way to start the show. We have a fun adventure here. It should be a short one. Again, the point of this call is to bring a community together to focus on a major centralization issue that we have in Ethereum, and that is the block explorer. So, Dave, I really need you to mute, buddy. I'm going to boot you. If for some reason I can't get you to mute on my screen. So, a fun adventure here. Should hate to do that to you, Dave. But he'll be back, I believe. So let's start off with just some short intros. I'm Griff Green. I work with Giveth. I don't have any intentions for this call. I'm just excited to bring everyone together so that we can solve this big issue. Let's throw it to Mitch.
Hey everyone, I'm Mitch. I'm with ETH. We got a bounty currently in the space with the POA network. Yeah, and it's very interesting and kind of like trying to move everything forward.
And a new one, we got Ziggy. What's up, Ziggy? Oh, you're muted.
Hey Griff, you finally got me. You finally got me in here anyway. Hey guys, I'm Ziggy. I work with POA Network. I'm most kind of work with communications, but I've recently kind of been brought on to kind of have an oversight of the UX and design of the Explorer that we're working on, which actually won the ETH prize, as Mitch was saying. Yeah, that's me.
Nice. And Jay Rush.
Yeah, my name is Jay Rush. I'm working on a project called QuickBlocks. If you're interested in QuickBlocks, you can listen to the Gitcoin live stream in about an hour. It starts at 5 o'clock Eastern. So I'm going to be on there talking about QuickBlocks.
I'm looking forward to that. I'll be on that, or I like to participate with that.
Nice. It'll be a party. Well, we have a few things on the agenda. Mitch was going to talk about Web3 scans progress.
Sorry, I just lost the mute there. Yep, just from Emil. Just a quick update because he couldn't make it. But Web3 scan status update. We are only a few weeks away from launching our Explorer MVP. We will very likely open source the Explorer API and the Explorer GUI. And I think he wanted to be on the next call to chat more about that.
Yeah, he had some really cool screenshots, and Web3 scan is looking pretty legit. So that's exciting. See the movement there. The next thing on the agenda is POA network update. Ziggy, you're filling in for Andrew.
Yeah, so Andrew couldn't make it today, so I just kind of got a quick grasp on what's been going on. So I think we showed you guys the last time, but we've been kind of working on the redesign of the Explorer after kind of seeing what the other kind of scanners have actually, and their shortcomings that we might be able to actually help with. So over the last 2 weeks, we've kind of been working a lot more on the design elements, the performance, and that kind of stuff. And I believe actually Andrew's already shared some of the screenshots from the scanner. So we're really, really looking forward to showing that to everyone, which probably will be the next maybe couple of weeks or so.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, nice. And well, we're just cruising through here. Unless there's any questions for POA network, move to the next one. Oh, Dave, we lost Dave, so we have to skip Dave's one and go to QuickBlocks. Get block address block number. Tell me more, Jay.
Well, I've always been writing code directly against the node. That's been where I've been since the beginning, and I always felt like what I'd really like to be able to get from the node is the answer to the question, may I have all of my transactions? Basically, here's my address, you give me all my transactions. And that doesn't really work because the block, the node would have to index the block or the addresses by transaction ID. So I've come up with an idea that's halfway between what the node can currently give you, which is basically nothing, and building that index. So I wrote a piece of code that lets me specify a block or a range of blocks, and it will return all the addresses that were involved in those blocks. And it'll specify like where in the block the address was found. So I think there's about 16 or 17 different places in a block where an address can appear. So what this code does, it spins through all the traces of every transaction in each block in the range, and it just simply spits out the addresses that it finds. And then outside of that code, you can write an indexed database of addresses per transactions per address. So you could build a solution that would say, give me every place in the blockchain that my account appeared in. But the code that I wrote, and this is true of almost all of my code, doesn't build a giant database because I want it to run on basically a desktop computer that's already running a node, which is already taking up a ton of data space or disk space. So I think this is like a nice step in between a full-fledged index of the Ethereum blockchain and a better ability to pick up what I think most people probably want, which is just a list of their own transactions.
Interesting.
So now there are people building these blockchain explorers, and those things are fantastic, and they can very easily answer that question, may I have a list of all the transactions? But my difficulty with that has always been, we're going to build systems that require big data warehouses paid for by somebody, and that somebody is a question that I think needs to get addressed sooner rather than later. So, and then Emil, is it Emil from Web3 Scan? He and I have started comparing these lists of transactions per block or addresses per block. And so we've started that process of, because another problem here is nobody really has an answer to what's the right answer for how, what addresses were in the block. I talked about that last time, the testing issue. So I'd like to see some of that get sort of standardized so that I can just generate, here's what I think the list of the addresses are per block. And then someone else can say, here's what I think. And then we can start comparing why you might have one set and I might have a different set.
I was following that conversation a little bit, and that was really, really nice on the old Telegram channel there. And it looked to me like you guys were having good corroboration of results across blocks. Was everything like one-to-one, or?
Well, no, that's part of the thing that we have to figure out, because my code simply spins through the data, and it doesn't aggregate, it doesn't summarize, it just notices that an address occurs and then reports on that address. So my data comes out right one after the other as it's encountered. Mm-hmm. And he's doing some manipulation to the data to make it fit into his database, which is understandable. But so we just have to work out that difference. Mm-hmm. And then something I found about a year and a half ago is Geth and parity actually number traces differently, I think. I'll have to double check that. That may have been fixed, but there's some slight discrepancies, but not that many. And then there's a few places where he found addresses that I don't find, or that I found addresses that he didn't find. So I'm trying to figure out what the differences are there.
Yeah, it's super interesting because, like you say, there is no true north in the space. Yeah. We don't know, and so as we do this exploratory research, that's very, very, very interesting.
Yeah, and then the fact that we don't know is also really interesting to me, because we need a way to know for absolute certain, because we basically created this database, the blockchain, that's perfect, that nobody really knows. That just doesn't jive in my head or something.
Yeah. Could you imagine? Could you imagine like Mark Zuckerberg going up to an employee and saying like, well, how many users do we have on Facebook? And he's like, well, I can't really tell you. So, sorry, you know, it doesn't really jive.
So the difference in the addresses that you guys are getting, is it a big difference? Like, are you getting a lot more different addresses than he's missing and vice versa, or what's the disparity?
No, I pretty much understand exactly what the differences are. My code, I made a choice that was probably not a great choice, to ignore uncles at a certain point, because I run on a local machine, so I want the smallest possible data. Yeah. So I kind of felt like uncles weren't that important to me. But it turns out that uncles earn income, or I guess the miner who won the uncle earns income. So those addresses I don't find.
And then what about the addresses that that he can't find, that you found? Do you know what their relationship with that is?
Yeah. So addresses appear in the input data of the traces and the transactions as part of the long string of characters that is the input data.
Okay.
So I find those that he doesn't find. And I think that those are sometimes important, sometimes not. But I'm just sort of naively, blindly finding everything that looks like an address.
Yeah.
So, and then later, when somebody's scrubbing the data that I'm creating, they can decide whether it's a useful address or a not useful address or whatever.
Well, the good thing is that you guys have got figured out now where the disparity is actually coming from. Like, you know, there's no unknowns per se. As it stands.
Well, we tested one block, so
yeah.
But I want to get to the point where we can both generate the same data, at least in the format of the same data, so that's easier to tell, you know, what's missing or what's additional.
I didn't know that uncles earned income. I thought it was like as soon as you that shorter.
Uncles don't, but I think, I'm not sure. I'm a little bit out of my area here, but I think that the miner of the uncle earns income.
Interesting. Shit.
Yeah. And it's no joke. It's like, I think it's 7/8 of a full block.
And I think I kind of, when I wrote the code, I just sort of was thinking of regular accounts, not mine. I wasn't accounting for miners, but I need to add that back in. So.
Hey, it's amazing that you were able to get all those little addresses in the input data. Okay, that's crazy. And it's really important because there's so much going on. If you didn't want to use the input data, then you might as well just use Bitcoin or some other blockchain.
Absolutely.
I mean, Ethereum is all about the internal transactions and all the crazy things you can do with DAOs, and if people are voting and all these other
really, there's a ton of very interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, and
another thing that can happen is a piece of data can go into a smart contract in the input data, and then 30 blocks later, it can be used in a trace or an internal transaction. And if you're not watching for it, you know, it can just, if you're not watching every trace, that piece of data can just you know, not even be noticed. So that's why I kind of as I run through, as I spin through, I just spit out everything that even looks like an address.
Yeah, because if you have
it's not too bad in the input data because it has 12 leading zeros.
Yeah.
And it kind of has a certain shape, so you can kind of see it. It's not perfect. But.
And if you have false positives, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, well, any other questions for QuickBlocks?
Pretty interesting stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing, I guess, what kind of happens next when it comes to you guys having the exact, you know, spitting out the exact same data.
I'd love for 6 different groups to all have exactly the same data, because that would make me feel comfortable. That
You're doing the right thing with 5 other people are getting the exact same result.
We're all making the same mistake, at least.
Yeah.
Well, Dave is back. Dave Appleton, who's one of the guardians of the Ethereum galaxy, always helping out in the background. You had a quick and dirty token explorer. Maybe you could just quickly introduce yourself and then tell us about your token explorer.
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Good. Okay, so what am I doing? Okay, so basically at Hello Gold, we've got like an internal, a private or permission blockchain, and we also talk to the public blockchain. And our internal product is modeled heavily using ERC20 tokens. So the first thing we wanted was to be able to trace those on the internal blockchain. So I wrote a quick and dirty ERC20 token tracker. So it's basically, it's just got a backend that's written in Go, linking into Geth, and the front end is written in React. And the other thing it's proven useful for is there are a few people out there who've got ERC223 tokens that don't get listed on Etherscan, and so a few people out there approached me to be able to use it on their ERC223 tokens as well. So it just so it's not a big thing, but it's just something which is basically useful. It's not very resource heavy. That's about it.
Very cool. Any questions for Dave?
Where is it? What was the name of the project?
Okay, I haven't put it on GitHub yet. I'll share a link to the current tracker, which is the current one on the main net, which is tracking ERC223s from somebody. I think there are a couple of bugs in it still that need to be ironed out. It crashes once in a blue moon. I think it doesn't look for the reliability of the connection and recover. That's the issue, because like QuickNode had a problem. Everyone had a problem with Geth, so the Geth nodes were going down, and that was crashing the Explorer. But I mean, it's there. It works. It needs a bit of reliability work. I'll get it. I'll get it onto GitHub sometime soon. But I'll share a link so you can have a look at it, just to be, for a quick look to start with.
How do you interact with the node?
I'm using I'm using on the main net. I'm using a quick node, and I'm using WSS. ETH client WSS. You could use IPC if you've got a local node, but my feeling is if you're running something on the mainnet, most people do not really have the resources to run local nodes anymore.
I run local nodes I run tracing nodes. It takes about 100 gigabytes of disk space, and it feels like it just runs pretty it doesn't really bother me much. I always have to have it open and running, but.
I can look at it again. It actually works equally well with a parity backend, I've discovered. I didn't think it would do, but yeah, it's just a WSS link to the backend. I want to run, to power up a local machine. I've got one on order, but it's like the cloud solution issue that like if somebody wants to host it for their tokens on the cloud, they probably don't want to pay an arm and a leg for it.
I'll have to get my DAppNode team out here sometime to talk about DAppNode. It's a pretty cool project that addresses this issue, trying to make it easy for people to just buy a machine that has their nodes, simple click installs of different Dockerized images of nodes that you'd want to run. So you could run, POA network with your Ethereum network and some kind of bridge service, right? Or you can run extra tracer, and it's like you buy a box, you call it done, and it's good. It's a really cool project.
Yeah, actually, I'm interested to see who's doing what on bridges as well. Because the group I was with were looking at doing an ETC, ETH bridge, and then everybody else is talking about doing them as well. Everybody's announcing them at the same time. So, yeah, we don't want to duplicate work, but it'd be interesting to see what is out there.
So we actually released our bridge back in May, which is like a POA network to Ethereum bridge. And we're going to kind of continue upgrading that to just see more features. And I guess kind of doing an ERC20 to ERC20 bridge. But yeah, that's a conversation for a different video.
Yeah. Ping me on that because that's something we want to talk about.
Absolutely, no worries.
Cool.
Nice.
Do we still have Griff?
I think we lost him.
Oh, no, I'm still here. I do have to go pretty soon, though.
Okay, cool.
I'm curious about moving to Mitch's thing, the quick ETH prize update.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, yeah, as you mentioned before, ETH prize with POA Network, those guys are closing in on that very, very quickly with their open source block explorer. So we're looking to keep our eyes on that and make sure that we have the feature parity with Etherscan that we discussed beforehand. But other than that, for ETH prize to kind of figure out these pain points in the community, we had 104 developer interviews, of which I think we interviewed Griff early before I joined on, and possibly some other fellows on the call as well. But yeah, so we're currently consolidating that work. Andy from Status. I'm getting a little bit of feedback.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Andy from Status is working with an agency out of South Africa to put together a really nice report to kind of consolidate and understand a lot of those pain points. And two of those early pain points of that everyone had to rely on Etherscan as opposed to having open source block explorer. That led to a bounty here. And also the Ethereum package manager, which is currently being worked on by the Truffle team. So when we're going through the report and the latest interviews, now we're having a talk to figure out the direction of the next bounties that we're talking with. We're talking with stakeholders, the Ethereum Foundation, 0x, Coinbase, and a few others whose names don't pop to my head at the moment. So we're kind of consolidating and figuring out the next direction. So we hope to have those new bounties announced in the coming weeks. We've had some really great applications. So thank you to the community for that. On my end, ETH prize doesn't have a super duper well-defined formal structure for a legal entity. So I'm talking with people at the Ethereum Foundation as well as ECF and others to figure out that we have all our ducks in a row as it comes to know your customer, anti-money laundering, and everything that we have to do to pay out these large bounties of $250,000. So yeah, that's a quick little ETH prize update from my end.
I think as well, Mitch, Robbie posted the interviews on GitHub for all the guys that you did for ETH prize. I haven't actually got a chance to look through them yet, but I think they are public somewhere as well, aren't they?
Yes, they absolutely are. And sorry, I should have mentioned that. They're and I'll post that in. I'm not sure how live stream usually works, but yeah, that's currently on the Status. It's Status. It's github.com/status-im and then ETH prize. So that lives under Status right now because Andy Tudo of Status, who is just excellent, has been doing a lot of work in processing those interviews with the agency. So actually, how the heck do I? Okay, here's the chat. Yeah, so that's where they currently live. That's the raw text or HTML, whichever one you prefer. And we're kind of prettying those up and running. And when I say we, Andy and his team are doing a lot of data analysis on that as well to kind of pull out insights from it. So it's really, really great work from a lot of the heavy hitters in the space.
Nice.
Cool. I think that's about it for mine, unless there's any more questions on what ETH prize is up to.
No, man. Thank you so much for doing such good work on that. Like, it's a huge effort, and I'm very curious to hear how you guys come up with a legal strategy on large things. Giveth is trying to avoid legal entities at all costs, and dealing with receiving a large amount of money through a foundation that has requirements, blah blah blah. You know, it's really difficult.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. It seems like it's a little bit of a headache, but you know, most things worth doing are. One last thing I would like to mention is we're going to have almost certainly a bounty related to UI, UX design in the space. So we've modeled a new Telegram channel off of what Griff and his guys have been doing, which is so excellent, the open source block explorer called Open Source Web3 design, please message me at mitchkosowski@gmail.com. Kosowski spelled Kosowski, or Mitch_Kosowski, same on Telegram, same long last Polish name there. If you'd like to join that, it may or may not happen next week, but we're looking to target next Friday at 2 p.m. EST for the first live stream for that group. And so we're going to have a lot of this great communication. Thomas was, as you see, Thomas had a lot of great talk with Emil. There's been so much good stuff coming out of open source Block Explorer. We said, okay, let's see if we can do that for design, because as we all know, the design and the space needs a little bit of TLC.
Definitely, definitely.
Cool.
Yeah, really cool. There was one thing, I might have to drop off during this, but last week we talked about some EIPs. I don't know, TJ, if you have any progress or an update on that, and if you need any resources that we can crowdsource for you.
Yeah, I saw that you did a pull request on my EIP thing, Griff. Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like I really need to take the time to understand what I'm saying in those suggested EIPs. I wouldn't mind if this group could kind of look at some of those things and dig deep and help me understand whether what I'm asking for is actually something that can be delivered by the node, or is already being delivered and I'm just not aware of it, or won't work for some technical reason. Mm-hmm. And then I'm also trying to figure out exactly, like, where do you start that conversation about EIPs?
Yeah.
You do that at the Magicians group or the Ethereum research group, or do you just write the EIP? Or so this thing I was talking about earlier about the get addresses, you know, I'm thinking about that in the terms of if it ran inside the node, if the node was able to do that. So that would be a very useful thing for the node to do, because then people wouldn't have to learn how to scan blocks for addresses. Mm-hmm. And I think that if people could get an easy list of addresses, they could build an index of their own interactions with the chain pretty easily.
Cool.
So that kind of thing might be in the node, but I don't really know how the process goes. But I invite anybody that wants to. I'll put a link up here to my suggested thoughts on that. But
and Thomas, could you please repost that in the group as a nice little refresher for the Telegram group?
You know, I'm totally open to any suggestions, because I don't know that I'm, you know, I don't know enough about how the node works to really feel that.
I actually think that the best, we'll get a lot more suggestions and knowledgeable people if we put it out in one of those two forums, or even just straight up as an EIP. I mean, it is difficult sometimes. You know, you want to know more about what you want to say, but generally the EIP system is like someone throws something out there and, you know, it's critiqued like crazy by like really smart people. Once it's out there.
That's the process.
Yeah, and so getting the feedback from people, like, I mean, we have 50 awesome brains in our Telegram chat group, but you know, I'd be curious to see what Nick Johnson says, you know, or the guys from Geth, and they'll have more access to it, and it'll be more on their mind if we, you know, stoke the fire a little bit and actually make it.
All right. Then in response to your question, how are the EIPs going? I'll say I'm getting up the nerve to actually write it. So
you got this.
Yeah. Awesome.
Oh, cool. Is there anything else, or is it time to wait for 2 more weeks before we get to meet again?
I just kind of want to say that I'm really looking forward to the release of the first version of the POA Explorer. If Andrew was here, he'd be able to tell you more, but I could just kind of see what's been happening from the inside, and it's shaping up to be a really, really nice project. I'm really happy with.
Yeah, I agree. The guys are working really hard. I just know from watching the repo, just my Gmail is going So there's a lot of work with that. So I'm also excited to see the results of it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Same here. Kudos.
Yay.
Well, cool, guys. I think that's it for this week then. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Have a good weekend, guys.
See you guys.
Thank you.